Good morning. Today our lesson would be about the elasticity of demand. So what do we really mean by that? We basically mean how will the change in the price will affect the quantity demanded. So we would have a change in the quantity demanded. Is that change big or small, or is there no effect? So, it's a measure of how much the quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in the price of that good. So, basically, the price elasticity is the percentage change in the quantity over the percentage change in the price. So if the price, and we would multiply it by 100 to get it right, and we should have the absolute value. So basically, if the prices increase, we would expect the quantity demanded would decrease, right? If the prices decrease, we would expect the quantity demanded to increase. So we would see all that. We would see by how much will the quantity would be affected by the change in that price. So let's see. How are we going to calculate the change in the quantity and in the change in the price? So we have something called the midpoint method. So let's call it the midpoint method. So the midpoint method. So if you wanted to calculate the percentage change in the quantity, it would equal Q2 minus Q1. Actually, it doesn't matter which Q you would take first, because you would take the absolute value over Q2 plus Q1 divided by 2. So this is the midpoint method for the quantity. If you wanted to get the midpoint method for the price, it would be the same thing. So the percentage change in the price would equal P2 minus P1 over P2 plus P1 divided by 2. Okay, so we have 3 types of elasticity. The first type is elastic. So it would be considered elastic when the price elasticity compared to 1 is greater than 1. That is when we consider it as elastic. The second type is inelastic, and that is when the price elasticity is less than 1. And the last type is unit elastic. This is the third type, and that is when the price elasticity equals to 1. So when we say that it is elastic, we mean by that the change in the price would affect the quantity a lot. So we would have a big change in the quantity. So even a small change in the price would affect the quantity a lot. For example, if the price was 10 and then it became and we had 10 people who wanted that product, and then suddenly it became 30. So now we would have only 2 people who want to get that product and are able to get that product. So that is what we mean by elastic. So what do we mean by inelastic? We mean by inelastic that the quantity demanded does not respond strongly to price changes. For example, if the price was 10 and the quantity demanded was 10, if the price became 100 or even 100, the quantity would still be 10, or it may not 10, it may be 9. It would get affected, but it's only a small effect. However, okay, and now we have something else called perfectly inelastic. So when we are going to draw it on the supply and demand curve, so this is the quantity, this is the price. When we have perfectly inelastic, the demand would be the same. It's like an eye, inelastic. So it does not change no matter how the price change. So this is perfectly inelastic. The quantity is stable. It does not change. It's 10. Okay? So if the price was 10, 20, 30, 40, we would have the same quantity. So this is perfectly inelastic demand. And the elasticity so the price elasticity would equal to 0, because when you compute it you would get a 0, because so when you compute it you would get a 0. Now something else called so we have something called perfectly elastic. So perfectly elastic, so the quantity demand changes infinitely with any changes in the price. So this is the quantity and this is the price, okay, and this is the demand, okay. So the price, for example, it's 4, so it would keep changing and changing and changing forever. However, the last, which is the unit elastic, I have said before but I want to repeat it. Unit elastic is the percentage change in the price equals the percentage change in the quantity. That is important. Okay, so let's see an example and let's try to answer it. So if the price of an ice cream cone increases, so the price increases from 2 to $2.2, and the quantity changes from 10 to 8. Then your elasticity of demand would be using the midpoint method. So first of all, we would find the percentage change in the quantity. So to find the percentage change in the quantity, what we would do is that 10 minus 8 divided by 10 plus 8. This is divided by 2. And the percentage change in the price would equal to 2 minus 2.2 divided by 2 plus 2.2. this is divided by 2. So at the end, put it using the calculator, you would get 22%, and don't forget to multiply by 100, divided by 9.5%, and it would equal to 2.32. 2.32, is it greater than 1 or less than 1? So the price elasticity is greater than 1, so it is elastic. So the percentage change in the price affects the quantity by this much. As we can see, the prices has increased, right? So when the price increase, the quantity will decrease, right? So when the price increased by 9.5%, the quantity demanded will decrease by 22%. Okay? Okay, so when are the things elastic and when are they inelastic? So demand tends to be more elastic, or let's say, when is it going to be elastic and when it's going to be inelastic? So the answer to that question, we have several things that we have to consider. First of all, are there a large number of substitutes? For example, if I have coffee and tea. If the coffee price increased, what would happen to the demand of tea? The demand of tea would increase. So the coffee would be elastic and the tea would be elastic because we have a large number of substitutes. The second thing, is it a luxury or a necessity? Okay, so if it's a luxury, it would be elastic. If it's a necessity, it would be inelastic. For example, if we want to buy milk, and milk is a necessity, so if the price was 10, 20, 30, the quantity demanded would not change a lot. However, if I wanted to travel to London, for example, and if the prices increase, the number of people who are going to travel will be less, right? The third thing I mean, the definition. Okay, is it a broad definition or is it a narrow definition? For example, food and pizza. Pizza tends to be more elastic than food because food is a wide area of a lot of types of food, and pizza is elastic because it's a specific thing. If the price of that thing increased, the quantity demanded would decrease. And the time period is the last thing. If we had a longer time period, it tends to be more elastic. Short period, inelastic, because they would have a lot of time to think for other substitutes, to find solutions. However, in the short term, we don't have many solutions. We have to work with what we have, so it would be more inelastic. Okay, now let's see how would the total revenue be affected by the elasticity of demand. So the total revenue, we know, is the amount paid by buyers and received by sellers of a good. Okay, so it's not the profit, it's the revenue. So we always know that the revenue equals to the price multiplied by the quantity, right? So if the quantity is elastic, okay? Or let's start by the quantity to be inelastic. Inelastic, okay? So here, if the quantity is inelastic and the price increased, okay, so if the price increased, how much will the quantity decrease? By a little bit, right? It won't decrease a lot. So you would have a great revenue. Yeah, so we would benefit from it. However, if another thing happened, if the price decreased and it is inelastic, this will increase by a little bit. So the revenue would decrease, so we would not benefit. However, if, again we're talking about the total revenue. So we said the revenue equals the price times the quantity. If the quantity is elastic and the price increased, the quantity will decrease by a greater value. So this would decrease. However, if the price decreased, the quantity would increase by greater value. So we would have revenue. Okay, the last thing, unit elastic. Okay, so we're talking about the total revenue equals to the price multiplied by the quantity. Okay, so the change in the price, if it increased, so there would be no effect. So we would have the same revenue. So the revenue would not change. Okay, and now we finished our lesson.